markups, markdowns, they get real-time data, and I can spreadsheet it, give them 15 of them, and they can pick the one that they like. As opposed to Joe Smith pitching a widget, trying to sell them their latest and greatest bond for their platform. And our CD ladders can cover the whole country, not just one single state, so they can get their $250,000 of insured money, FDIC covered money, all taken care of at one house. And all they have to do is call our office. We'll send them a sheet within about an hour and a half. They can make a decision and ship it back. So we do portfolio reviews. We do all the same things that the good money managers do. We have in-house programs, IPS statements, and all of that. Compensation. So it's an interesting game, as I charge a flat rate to some of those institutions. They pay me a fee every quarter to do this. They also pay investment management services, but we'll be competitively priced for their own stuff. Insurance products pay a commission. Most of y'all know that. I would hope, right, Stephen? So does Stephen. Stephen hopes. Now, the institution has some options here. Because if we get the institution licensed on all sides, we'll pay them a percentage as an agent on that case. Now, we do a lot of due diligence on this, so we do make sure that they are 100% licensed, ENO'd, set up. Tracy puts all that together for them in a packet and a kit, make sure that all that's taken care of for that institution, so that when they get their percentage of revenue back, it is a legitimate insurance agency commission, and then we appoint the advisors that are in that institution through their agency, that are through our general agency, which is through our AFG partnership. See how that all kind of flows together? We build it out for our institutions the same way you would for a traditional agent. So after the initial review, I estimate the cost for them and give them all the ranges, usually within the second or third meeting, depending on the work that's needed to be done. Okay, so this is the case Stephen was alluding to. I'll get into this with you. How am I doing on time? 15? Oh yeah, we'll be in good shape here. All right, so our scenario here, this particular credit union had a 457 plan. Remember, credit unions are 501Cs, so they're a nonprofit entity. They don't pay taxes. Credit union, the 457 plan is a disaster to the executive, because when it comes to the executive, it's taxed. They're going to pay at the top tax rates. Typically, they're going to get a lump sum when it gets bounced out. Just the nature of how they design those plans. So, what we did, they could either pay the taxes, the executive's good, and move on, not their favorite solution. Or, we could get creative. This was the option that was chosen. So, what we did is I sat down with them and I looked at their existing situation, their existing plan. We reviewed the cash in the 457 plan that was owned by the credit union. We took those assets and we realized that the plan document could be rewritten and modified as long as the executives would agree to it. And the board. Two pieces, right? Had to get everybody to agree. So I had to get the president first, I had to get the chairman second, and had to make sure that the employees were happy in this plan. There were three in this particular situation. So what we agreed to do, we redid the document. We said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cash in the 457 plan, but not to the individuals, to the institution, because the institution's nonprofit. So the credit union is going to realize that as profit on their return. We're going to set up a rabbi trust. We're going to set up a non-qualified program through Section 457, but it won't be a 457 because we're going to do it in CERP format with supplemental executive retirement benefits. So we're going to take that money that we took out of the 457 plan. We're going to build a portfolio of insurances. I alluded to it yesterday. So what we did is we stacked these three executives. We went back and forth. Because remember, you still have to get this approved by the CFO, their attorney, the board, and everybody else who can see that thing, right? Including the regulators. So we built this document. Stephen and I went back and forth with these color-coded charts. Even though he knows that I'm colorblind, he still put them in colors. So that was a fun time, but we could at least find the numbers. And we built the portfolios for each of these people. Now, what we did is we took the assets that were in the 457, moved them to the trust. All right. Remember, it's still an asset on the ledger. of the institution. So it can still be brought back in case of bankruptcy. None of the executives are worried about bankruptcy. Why? Because it's the president, the CFO, it's the top 3 people in the institution. They know whether or not that thing's in financial duress. They trust that they're going to do a good job for the next 7 years. That's their anticipation. So what we did is we modified their agreement that said, okay, you have to stay with them another 7 years. I said, fantastic, let's stay with them another 7 years. We're going to fund the policies in the most efficient way possible. And how is that? We used 7 paychecks. We max funded all of their policies to the tune that it would develop the most efficient way to bring money out at designated time periods. Then we did something that's a little different. We set up an agreement between the credit union and the trust. We set up an agreement between the trust and the employee that allowed for everybody to borrow money. Employees can borrow money from the trust. Trust can borrow money from the institution, can borrow money from the trust if it's needed, and vice versa. And we set that at what the IRS rates were at the time. What the fair market value is, it floats every year. Right now it's 2.34%. So the money is borrowed, they have to pay that back with interest. Or they at least have to pay the interest back. We said, okay, that would be super. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie the death benefits back to pay the loan back that the executives take for income. And we're going to set up the interest rate. We're going to amortize that out so that it meets all the IRS code provisions, so that the institution, at the end of the day, at the end of 20 years, they'll get all of their money back, plus the IRS guidelines interest rate, all via the death benefit. Whatever death benefits left, we're going to give to the executives' heirs. And they can name them in the trust. And oh, by the way, we're going to use the loan provision that we put in that trust to bring all of those assets out tax-free. And we're going to borrow from the insurance, we're going to borrow from the trust, and we're going to send all those dollars out with growth tax-free over the next 20 years after the 7 pay test is done. So what that ended up being was a $700,000 a year premium for multiple cases that we wrote inside of there. We didn't get overly aggressive with interest illustrator rates, about 6%. We've got, we used the loan provisions in the plan. Stephen, really, we went back and forth with this to kind of be as conservative as possible. Then what it also generates out of there is about $2 million in assets, because not all of it could be funded in the premium deposit accounts. We ended up with very happy executives. You can't see some of that, but what happened there is once the executives realized it was all about them, they got really excited about it. They called me a few weeks ago and said, hey, by the way, will you take over our DB plan? And I said, yeah, let me take a look at it. And they flipped it out to a little over $6.5 million in AUMs that'll be coming here in the next 2 months. Without a lot of work, because that was a unsolicited, hey, would you take care of this for me? Because I don't have to deal with these people, and I know you do it all. Fantastic. So now we will have all of their assets, and we're setting up a non-qualified for a comp program for the same institution for the other executives that weren't allowed to participate in this plan. So at the end of the day, we work with advisors in the OSJ, joint work opportunities for anybody in this room. We partner, we can add, we have RIA-only platforms, we have multiple affiliation strategies for advisors to work. And then if you have an institution that needs an advisor, we can help with that. But we can also work with you independently if you so choose to show you how to set that up with your strategic relationships. And we do it the old-fashioned way. We just split it with, we're all through the same family with AFG, so it's important to us that they get taken care of, and we work real hard to make sure that that happens. Because our mission is simple. We want to be a one-stop solution for advisors and institutions. Because it's important that they know that they don't have to go to 400 different places to get what they need done and fix their pain points. So, that's what we do. Those are our two sales ideas: advisory services, taking over the institutions, and adding those cert plans. So what that allows you to do is generate premiums. For us, from a premium standpoint, what was it, a little over 700,000 or so in premium. It's going to end up generating another 8.5 million, I think, when it's all said and done in assets under management. All from one case, just focus on their pain point. So, thank you.
So what questions, before Reagan sits down, what questions do you guys have for him? Does anybody have any questions on how it would work if we wanted to partner with Reagan, or how he can help you?
What size institution are you looking at, or you're most successful with? How many branches?
Yeah.
Whether it's a bank or...
So we recently, I had the opportunity to interview a $1 billion branch, and they had 300 locations. That was a little big because of the amount of locations. It generally works really well under $1 billion in assets. So $500 million institution is great, 250 is great. We're working with a $65 million institution in El Paso right now. So it just depends on what they're trying to do. From a benefit standpoint, it can be any size. From adding an advisor to the institution, we have to get a good game plan. I know the three of us are working on a couple of leads right now that if you get that institution, we would go out and hire advisors for them to make that happen, and then set up program leaders for it. So benefit size, it doesn't matter. From an advisor standpoint, generally it's going to work best under $1 billion, and 500 million is kind of a sweet spot.
I'm kind of trying to figure out the logistic of this whole thing. So I'm in Seattle, let's say I found some credit union, which is 50 miles from me. Where and how do you come into the picture? And where I'm going to be in the picture at this time?
Okay, so you have an institution and you want to bring us in, is that what I'm understanding? Okay, so we would work a couple of ways. One, we work on the same split sheet Stephen and I worked off of many years ago, the old MDRT splits. So we just work the situation out, who's doing what. What we come into is, if you have the relationship and you open it up and you ask them, hey, I want to bring in a guy and discuss your benefits program, we'll fly in and visit with them, with you. And then we'll assess the situation, and if there's a good opportunity, then we'll move forward together, and we'll show you, and then we'll work out the split based on who's going to do what. You're the agent in the case. Technically, unless you want to outsource the whole thing to us, right? So if you say, hey, I don't want to touch it, just give me a split, and I'm going to go home and go back to golf, whatever, that's fine. Then that's a different relationship. But if we're both going to get in the boat and paddle, then generally we're going to work off of our normal 50-50 split. We're going to fly in, we'll take care of it, we'll present it. It's your agent, and then you'll help us service it, and we'll teach you how to service that client. Because the whole goal is to teach you how to fish, right? We want you to be able to do it on your own. So we'll work through that education as well.
Good question.
Yeah, and we can work out the expenses and stuff like that together. But it's just a good, let's sit at the table, pin it out, and make sure it works for everybody.
An interesting thing I learned about splitting cases when I first came back to work with my dad 15 years ago. He sat me down and he said, because I was just out of college, a little bit egotistical, I didn't want to split cases because I wanted all the money, right? I don't want to split 50-50, I want to take 100%. And he taught me a lesson in math. He said, what's 50% or 100%, of zero? Zero, it doesn't matter. Said, what's 50% of $350,000? That's not bad. If you can bring in partners with you, the split becomes immaterial because everybody's bringing in value, right? As long as we're all bringing in value to the table, to the equation, all ships are going to rise. We're all going to make a lot more money.
And what you find in this kind of niche market is news travels. So what it helped us do is we have another institution in Oklahoma that's waiting on us to do the same thing. And we've already kind of quoted. The CEO said yes, we have to take care of some other benefit plans first. But that's another $450,000 case that was just like, hey, can you fix this because we don't have anything. And that's a similar kind of model. So it just kind of helps you roll that in. But it'd be nice to get that one at the end of the year too.
I've been blessed to be working with NFA for how long, Reagan? 25 years. I've been in this business for almost 30, and the relationship I formed with NFA, I guess, was happenstance, but so fortunate for me. And what I've come to realize as I've been in this business, first of all, I was that egotistical young man too. I can do it all myself. I can figure it out myself. I can present it myself. I and do it. And of course, I'll take the commissions myself. And that was the whole point, but you quickly learn that the reality is, if you get sophisticated in your business, no one really thinks you know it all. And if you try to portray that you know it all, you actually put your credibility in question. No one knows it all. And as I have become older in the business, I'm starting to get the question from some of my clients that I've worked with for 30 years, well, Jeff, if something happens to you, then what? It is so good to have an entire team, a trustworthy team backing you up, knowing that you can turn to, that makes you way more than what you are by yourself. It just does that.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff's been with us for a long time as part of our continuity plan. We do a legacy plan for our advisors. That if something does happen, we take care of the spouse in the house, and then we take care of their clients as well. So it's one of those things that everybody can follow. Yes, sir.
So we can work with a credit union, I guess, right? One of these institutions, but and we ask, one increased bottom line, decreased costs, but right then I would be at a loss to say what's the next steps, right? So we bring you in. All we have would be the relationship getting in the door, but to sell what we're doing, I would need to know a lot more.
Yeah, so I mean, behind the scenes, what we would want to do is bring you up to speed on some education points and send you our institutional services brochures. We have some brochures that kind of capture the high level for so you can hand those out and have that as a resource for your relationship. And then we would come in with you, and we can do a phone call ahead of that with them, and do a video conference or a webinar or whatever they're most comfortable with, and then work that out together. But yeah, that would be, we would bring you up to speed on, hey, if they ask this, there's your, kind of the old book, right? The old objectives book that we used to have in the file drawer. I think I still have it. This is what you say if they say X.
You don't learn it all in 1 hour presentation though, right? The idea behind bringing Reagan in and giving him time on the platform was so that you knew Reagan, not so that you know everything Reagan knows, right? But it gives you an opportunity to know who Reagan is, get his information during the network break, so that you can sit down and have additional training, additional conversations about how this works in the credit unions and how you can partner your business.
Yeah, and from a length of time standpoint, you can set that expectation. This case wasn't an overnight. Everybody looks at it and goes, oh, yeah, it came easy. Now, this is a 10-month deal where no one gets in a hurry. If you get in a hurry in this size of a case, you're going to mess it up. I mean, essentially, I'm not asking them for $700,000 a year, right? I'm asking them for $5.5 million. Is what I'm asking them for. So we work through that slowly with everybody to provide a good foundation of education, so that when the decision time came, we had 11 out of 11 votes on the board. We had 100% agreement with the participation, and then I mediated the client service agreements between them, the participant service agreements.
2 questions. Question number 1 is, we're flying back home. Next week we start to looking for those clients. What criteria would you use to start looking for those clients, number 1? And question number 2, you made distinction between credit unions and the banks. So would you recommend to work primarily with the banks or credit unions, or it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, so the target market is the one that you have the best relationship with. Yeah, and if you don't, then a good market is 250 million to 750 million is a good market. $1 billion is super. So John, to your point, I mean, if you can get $1 billion institution, it's great. We just have to get more strategic with how we're going to deploy assets to serve them, right? Because they have so many branches. The second question of what was it again? It was the banks or credit unions. It doesn't really matter which you use. What you have to understand is that the banks have a holding company that are going to own them. So you have to, and then you have to distinguish with who's making the decision? Is it the bank or is it the holding company? Because there's boards at each. So you want to know who the decision makers are. Is it the chairman or is it the president? Who has the most influence? Credit unions are a little bit more streamlined, and they have a lot more flexibility. So there's a little bit less regulatory work with a credit union than with a bank. But the group in Oklahoma is all banks. The group in Texas is credit unions. So it's really, from my vantage point, it doesn't matter. I just want you to be aware of that when you go in, and one's going to take a little longer than the other.
Pretty much go about this slow and the banks to reach.
Yeah, I mean, if they're at 100, 200 million or more in assets, they're really good. The smaller institutions are really hard. Ryan and Zach started a brand new program for an 80 million? An 80 million? 125 for a $125 million institution, and it's work to start the advisory program. So what they're doing now is they're going back and they're implementing all the benefits. And they've started that process this year. So they took over the 401k. They added the second half of that. But the pain point for the president was the top half. So we bit the bullet on the first half because it takes a while on the advisory side. But then now he's going back in and adding the benefits. And then that's where the value comes in. So it's just a process of finding those pain points.
I think one thing that you have to realize is you have to have open conversations when we're working with them. Because when we're all working together, everybody needs to know what's going on so there's no doubt. A lot of times you have doubt when you're working with new individuals, especially when you're taking them into your institution. So everybody has to be aware of what's going on. Who is he going in to see? You need to know what to say. Then we need to coordinate it with everybody because we didn't know everything going into that either. But we did have enough sense to bring people in.
And there's some tricks of the trade here too. If you have a guy kind of mentality or a gal, you can flip me out an email and we actually send you a report on their asset size, what they're invested in, and what they do currently, so that you have some forensics before you walk in there and tell you kind of how to set that up for them. There's some metrics that are all public that you can work with. So.
Perfect. No, hey, that's awesome. So
Thank you.
appreciate Reagan coming.